So, good day everyone. We are done with the factors affecting the development of juvenile delinquency. Again, those are family, peer, environment, school, and mass media. And now, of course, we also discuss the other contributory factors to juvenile delinquency problems such as the government, religion, and exclusion. And now, the focus of our discussion will be on the role of police in dealing with delinquency problem and the suggested remedy for it. So to start, let's begin with our learning objectives. At the end of the lesson, the student should be able to discuss the role played by the police in solving delinquency problem, explain the legal procedure the police take in dealing with juveniles in conflict with the law, and identify approaches and strategies used by the police in preventing or controlling delinquency. So before we proceed with the police roles in dealing with delinquency problem, let's have some categories of children sa ating juvenile justice. We have defendant, one who is without parent, guardian, or custodian, or whose parents, guardian, or other custodian for good cause desire to be relieved for his care and custody and is dependent upon the public for support. They are only depending for the support of our public in order for them para sila is makasurvive. While abandoned child, one who had no proper parental care or guardianship, or whose parents or guardians have deserted him for a period of at least 6 consecutive months, that will be also discussed under PD 603 or the Youth and Welfare Code of the Philippines. Also, for 9523, the abandoned child the parents have deserted him or her for a period of at least 3 continuous months. So, nagkaroon tayo ng amendment ng laws per in sa RA 9523 at least 3 months or at least 3 continuous months only. And then we have mentally retarded. When we say mentally retarded, they are socially incompetent, mentally subnormal, retarded intellectually from birth or early age, retarded at maturity, or mentally deficient as a result of constitutional origin through heredity or disease. Sometimes, yung mga bata, they only inherit being mentally retarded. But, yung iba naman, at birth, ganun na talaga sila, or as time goes by, nagkakaroon ng changes sa sarili nila or nagkakaroon ng changes mentally sa isang bata. Physically handicapped, crippled, deaf mute, blind, and other conditions which restrict their means of action or communication with others. Sila yung may mga kapansanan for you to better understand what is physically handicapped. So I do hope that you are familiar with this term. Next, we have emotionally disturbed individuals. They are being emotionally disturbed because of their traumatic experiences na nare-retain sa utak nila na kapag paulit-ulit nilang naaalala, may isip nila na baka mangyari ulit sa kanila. Kaya nagkakaroon, sometimes nafe-feel nila that they are insane or end up sa mga tao nagiging insane person sila. It's because of the traumatic experiences. And then we have mentally ill, those with any behavioral disorder, whether functional or organic, which is of such a degree of severity as to require professional help or hospitalization. That is the worst part of being mentally retarded, wherein sobrang affected na yung utak niya to the point na kailangan niya ng matreat and ma-hospitalized. Next, we have disabled, includes mentally retarded, physically handicapped, emotionally disturbed, and mentally ill children, wherein disabled is the generic term for all these illnesses. So we have special classification of child. Take note po. We have mentally retarded. For the custodial, the IQ level of them is 25 only. Then for trainable, 25 to 50, which is 1/4 or 1/2 of average child. Educable, educable, we have 50 to 75% yung intelligence quotient nila, or equivalent to 1/2 to 3/4 up to 5 to 6 grade. And then borderline or low normal, 75 to about 89% ng IQ level nila, which requires some extra help. Then we have also idiot, one whose mental condition is likened to a person 2 years old below. And then moron, one whose mental condition is similar to that of 7 years of age below, according to Henry Goddard. Now, let's move on with the police, role of our police in dealing with delinquency problem and the suggested remedy for it. So, for police work on delinquency, the police are the first line of defense. Of course, familiar naman kayo that police are the first line of defense against crime. Having the power to arrest and use deadly force, the police are charged both with preventing and deterring crime and maintaining peace within the community. So, juveniles and the police. Most juvenile delinquents are immature boys and girls lacking in judgment, who need understanding and guidance rather than punishment. So that at work, the police have constantly bear in mind, though that individual delinquents should be handled in a different manner from the adult offenders, which is not the same, or the handling of the juvenile offenders is not the same as the adult offender. Most juvenile delinquents are immature boys and girls lacking in judgment, who need understanding and guidance rather than punishment. So youthful law-breaking and misbehavior strain law enforcement in large degree. The leniency of juvenile court codes also makes it difficult for police to deal effectively with youth crime. So one of the most common complaints of the police officer is that arrested juvenile offenders are back on the streets before the officers have had a chance to complete the necessary paperwork. Yet, the importance of police-juvenile relations cannot be minimized, mostly when the police officer arrested the youthful offender or the juvenile delinquents. They are going back into the community or to the street because their treatment for the child is different from the adult, which is we need to be more understandable with the juvenile delinquent. Unlike for the adult na kapag nakita natin sa kalsada na commit siya ng crime, kailangan na agad ma-apprehend. The police are usually a juvenile offender's first contact with the juvenile justice system. So the police officer can use his discretion to either change the youth or involve them in the system. So in fact, the police officer becomes an on-the-spot prosecutor, judge, and correctional system when dealing with a juvenile offender, because one of the person who will initiate an action is the police. Of course, they will stand as the prosecutor and as the judge of the offender, or as the judge of the juvenile offender. Let's proceed with police services. Police work with juvenile offenders usually have skills and talents that go beyond those generally associated with regular police work. So in police services, of course, we need to have a police officer who are well equipped in doing his job to give services which is basically needed in police works. So when officers on patrol encounter a youngsters committing a crime, they are responsible for dealing with the problem initially. They generally refer the case to the juvenile unit or to a juvenile police officer for follow-up investigation or for follow-up. And then we have also the police roles. We've already done with the police services. Now what is the police roles? Juvenile officers operate either as specialists within a police department or as part of the juvenile unit of the police deportment. So, police roles on juveniles are similar on adult offenders, which is to intervene if the actions of a citizen produce public danger or disorder. The difference is that during the intervention, iba yung approach sa juvenile and iba din yung approach sa adult offender. Wherein, sa juvenile, kailangan nating maipaliwanag sa bata kung ano yung mali na nagawa niya. And they are not required to be apprehended immediately. Kailangan ma-counsel muna sila, mabigyan sila ng guidance, and mabigyan ng proper intervention. Unlike sa adult, when they committed a crime, the intervention, alam nila, aware sila sa nagawa nila, and since they are in the legal age, they are required or kailangan na sila ay biglaan or not least necessarily na biglaan silang makulong but rather alam nila yung consequences for their actions. Of course, the police officer must have a thorough knowledge of the law. Hindi ka kasi magiging police officer if you don't have the knowledge of the law and have a desire to work. And hindi mag-work out, hindi mo malalaman, hindi ma-enhance yung knowledge mo, hindi mag-improve yung knowledge mo, hindi mag-gain yung knowledge mo without the desire to work. Of course, most especially when you are in the service, especially for being a police officer, you need to have a knowledge of the law. Police and the rule of law. When police are involved in criminal activity of juvenile offenders, their actions are controlled by statute, constitutional case law, and judicial review. Of course, when you apprehended a juvenile person or juvenile delinquents, they need to have an actions, whether it is controlled by statute, constitutional case laws, and judicial review na kailangan ipaintindi nyo sa bata or sa guardian ng bata. So there are 3 methods of investigation and control, which includes the arrest procedure, search and seizure, and custodial interrogation. So in arrest procedure, when a juvenile is apprehended, the police must decide whether to release the youngsters or make a referral to juvenile court. Cases involving serious crime against property or persons are often referred to the court. Less serious cases, such as disputes between juveniles, petty shoplifting, runaways, and assaults of minors, are often directed from the court action. So, to make a legal arrest, an officer must have probable cause to believe that an offense took place and that the suspect is guilty party. So, hindi mo basta huhulihin ng isang tao kung walang probable cause. Hindi ka naman mahuhuli ng isang juvenile or isang bata, isang minor, kung nakita mo lang siyang nakatayo sa daan. But rather, ma-apprehend mo siya if directly mong siyang nakita or you caught in the act the person doing a crime. Of course, we have probable cause. Wherein probable cause, it is usually defined as falling somewhere between a mere suspicion and absolute certainty. That you, as a police officer, alam mo na may probable cause para mahuli mo ang isang bata. Not only a juvenile but also an adult offender. Since we are in juvenile justice system, we only refer it for the juveniles or for minors. Take note the loco parentis. So, ito po is kindly remember po or take note. Loco parentis is a Latin word meaning in place of the parent. So, loco parentis, wherein police officers can stand as parent of a juvenile because one of the notion of police officer is that the juvenile is not really arrested but taken to custody, which implies a protective rather than a punitive form of detention. Diba? As I've cited a while ago, that police officers stand as prosecutor, as judge of the juvenile offender. So they are not referring child as the apprehended person, but rather they want to take them into custody para mabigyan sila ng protection rather than sa pagbibigay ng punishment sa isang bata. Next, we have search and seizure. So, do juveniles have the same right to be free from unreasonable search and seizures as adults? So, what do you think? So, you have to think or kindly give an opinion as we go in the discussion, as we have the flow of our discussion. So, do juveniles have the same right to be free from unreasonable search and seizures as adults? So the answer is yes, as long as in the legal process and have warrant to search. Not only for juvenile but also for the adult offenders, wherein the police officers are not allowed to search as long as there is no warrant to search. Next, we have Miranda Rights. We have the right to remain silent. Any statement they make can be used against them. They have the right to counsel. If they cannot afford counsel, it will be furnished at public expense. Next, we have the suggestive remedy, which is the last part ng ating discussion. Control unlawful behavior of youth and undesirable conditions involving youth. Control is the term which acknowledges the existence of unlawful behavior and the need to take action. So, in control, it is accomplished in three major ways by the police officers. First is to investigate the individual cases of the youth. Of course, when we are referring to police officer, they are in charge with investigation. Second is to provide them a constructive disposition for individual cases, which refers to other agencies or which refers to the juvenile court. So when they being investigated, the juvenile cases, they need to provide a constructive disposition that will be referred to the juvenile courts. Lastly, providing overall effective police operation that will reduce the opportunity in committing crime. So if the police officer did an investigation and provide a constructive disposition, they need to provide an effective police operations wherein all of the juveniles will take that cases as a lesson for them not to commit another crime. Next, unlawful behavior of youth is a term which acknowledges the existence of unlawful behavior and the need to take actions. So, in unlawful behavior of youth, it is literally the term unlawful behavior wherein they violated a laws. While the undesirable condition, it is the term refers to community hazards and community problems harmful to our youth. So there will comes a time that the community is one of the major problem, while the youth undergo some conditions that may adapt them from their surroundings, wherein mas na-adapt kasi nila yung mga nagagawa or nangyayari sa surroundings rather than sa nangyayari sa family nila. So, as continuation, since we already tackled the Miranda rights of the individual or the juvenile, so I have the question. So, question in the Miranda rights is that juveniles knowingly and willingly waive the rights given them by Miranda. So, or does youngsters acting alone have sufficient maturity to appreciate the right to remain silent? So, we are referring to the right to remain silent. So, right to remain silent, hindi natin masasabi, di ba, na sa child, kaya ba niya agad na mag-remain as silent sa korte? So, minsan takot yung isang bata, pero yung mga adult offender, aware sila sa mga right na yon, right to remain silent. But yung mga bata, they are not aware ano ba yung Miranda rights na right to remain silent. So, yung right to remain silent natin sa mga bata is matututunan niya or maipapaliwanag ng counsel. Hindi basta-basta sasagot yung isang bata. Kaya nga, as much as possible, wala yung parents or guardian sa court for them to decide it. Kasi yung mga parents, kapag nakita ng mga bata yung parents nila, di ba, iiyak lang sila or hindi sila makakapagbigay ng opinion nila. Unlike kung yung bata lang mismo nandoon with the aid of our counsel, mas malilinawan ng bata ano ba yung kailangan nilang sabihin or kailangan nilang gawin. So take note in the Miranda Rights, as a general rule is that juveniles can waive their rights to protection from self-incrimination, but that the validity of this waiver is determined by the circumstances of each case. So, tandaan nyo po yun ha. Again, as a general rule, that juveniles can waive their rights to protection from self-incrimination, but that the validity of this waiver is determined by the circumstances of each case. So, when we say circumstances under this rule or general rule, it is the combination of other factors such as education, the child's knowledge of the change, and the method of interrogation, of course, with the aid of our counsel. Hindi kasi nila mas malilinawan yun kung walang aid ng counsel, kung walang nagpapaliwanag sa kanila. Kasi minsan, yung parents natin, yung guardian natin, they are not really aware of what the process of our investigation or what is the process in the court. Kaya kailangan may aid ng counsel para mas malinawan yung bata as well as the guardian. Next is the prevention of unlawful behavior of youth and conditions causing antisocial activities. We have prevention. It implies the keeping of unlawful behavior from occurring originally or keeping unlawful behavior to a minimum and thus avoiding police intervention. So in prevention, they have a prevention phase which is accomplished by the influencing youth or the police officer and the participation of the community. Kasi in prevention, the influencing youth such as the parents and the general public, they have to meet the needs of the youth to conform all the laws and regulations made for their protection, as well as they need to participate in community organization planning with other agencies to improve the total community. And they need to provide an overall effective police operations, which is the same as under the control that I've said a while ago, that kasama or one of the major causes or one of the three major ways of the police officers that provide an overall effective police operations which reduce the desire on the part of the individuals to commit unlawful acts. We have also police responsibility is to detect crime, apprehension of offenders, preservation of peace, and general safety of the public. So these are the tips that have been found by practical experience to be the most conducive to the juvenile's welfare as well as in the best interest of the police department's aim and purposes. So etong juvenile justice system, we are meeting the best interest of the child. So kapag sila ay na-apprehend na, we need to know the best interest of the child. Hindi natin sila basta i-apprehend, hindi natin sila basta bibigyan ng punishment, but rather we need to intervene them or we need to give them an intervention which is based on the best interest of the child. So first tip is to treat the juvenile with consideration, be friendly, be firm. Be firm in a way na you have to appeal to his intelligence, to his reason, and his sense of fairness. Hindi yung kakausapin mo yung bata, pero magbe-base ka doon sa perception mo. Dapat kailangan mo ding i-level kung ano sa tingin mo yung pwedeng intelligence ng isang bata. Next is to discover the child's problem if possible. Try to gain the child's respect and confidence. And remember that the child of today is the man of tomorrow. It is wise to point out very clearly the disastrous result to a boy's life if he is convicted of a major crime, and that this conviction will be a mark against him for the rest of his life. So take note na kapag nahuli ka ng bata, imagine ano yung magiging future niya, ano yung magiging tingin sa kanya ng ibang tao. So remember that the child of today is the man of tomorrow, and do not resort to vulgarity or obscenity. Do not use insulting names and never lose your temper when you are talking to a child, or when you are getting an information to the child. Next, community-based policing. Police can carry out their duties more effectively by gaining the trust and assistance of concerned citizens. So, the main police role is to increase feelings of community safety and encourage area residents to cooperate with their local police agencies. They need to advocate of community policing regarding the approach as useful in juvenile justice system. Kailangan ma-improve or ma-enhance nila yung or ma-gain nila yung trust ng community para mas magkaroon sila ng maayos na samahan. And then, there are also problem-oriented policing, which refers to SARA. First is scanning, involves identifying a specific crime problem through various data sources. Wherein sa scanning, for example, you will survey ano ba yung mga cases doon, ano ba yung mga victim surveys sa isang lugar. And then, analysis, you analyze what is the survey all about, or what is the causes while the child is being victimized or involved in different unusual activities or illegal activities. Analysis involves carrying out an in-depth analysis of the crime problem and its underlying causes. And then we have also response, which brings together the police and other partners to develop and implement a response to the problem based on the result produced in the analysis stage. So response, what will be your response based on the analysis or based on the analyzed data that being surveyed in scanning? While the assessment, the stage in which the response to the problem is evaluated. Na kapag nagkaroon na tayo ng response, ano na yung naging changes? Ano na yung naging improvement sa isang crime or sa isang causes ng crime? So, that's all sa ating subject or topic to be discussed by midterm examination, which covers the police roles as well as the suggestive remedy for it. So, thank you and God bless.